It's just that classic, like, you don't look autistic. And because I guess people have, like, still this perception of autism that it's like, you know, little white boys, like lining up trains and stuff. And I think, I guess just that idea, you know, like masking, like some autistic people are very good at like pretending they're not autistic and like fitting in and stuff, but that comes at a cost. And I think for me, like, I think the more you get to know me, the more autistic I probably do look. But yeah, so I guess it's just that misconception about like the variety of what a spectrum actually is, and that everyone is individual, and what you've seen in the media isn't necessarily an accurate portrayal of what autism looks like. It was just that having that label meant that the school was more willing to make those changes. Like we were asking for the same things probably as we'd been asking for before we got the diagnosis. But when you've got the label, then they're like, oh, okay, yes, we can do that. Whereas, or we can't do exactly that, but we can try this. Whereas before then, I've read my diagnosis report, or like the letter that the pediatrician wrote to the school, and there's a sentence in there about, you know, in my professional judgment, I don't believe Rachel is primarily manipulative. Like, so I guess there was maybe this perception. Yeah, I was a bit shocked when I read that as well. I guess there was maybe this perception at the school that I was just misbehaving, or that I was manipulating my parents, or that I was being naughty for the purpose of being naughty, or that I just needed better discipline or whatever. And so I think having a doctor say no, like, I mean, I don't know why anyone would ever think any child is just manipulative. Like of course no one would do that. Like, kids aren't evil little creatures. Like, if their behaviour is telling you something about what they need, but apparently, if that word is in the diagnosis report, then there was that perception. So I think just the label helped to get like the changes in the environment that I needed to do well. Yeah, and then I think you know, as I've got older, and obviously I've still like continued to struggle with anxiety and also depression, but it's been helpful to have that label to be able to understand what works for mental health in autistic people as opposed to in neurotypical people, because it does come back to that thing of like, you know, maybe cognitive behavioural therapy doesn't work as well. Like, I think there's some research that shows that it's not as effective in autistic people as it is in neurotypical people, and like that's always been my experience. Sorry, I might have just bumped the microphone. That's always been my experience, that people have been like, you know, in CBT it's like, well, let's reframe those thoughts, like that bad thing's not going to happen. And I'm like, I know that it's not going to happen. Like, I know that the thought is not reasonable. I still feel anxious, so this is not helping. And I also remember I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell everyone, because then no one can be mean to me anymore. And Mum was like, no, you're at school with 11-year-old girls, like they probably will still be a bit mean to you, so maybe just don't. So we didn't end up telling any of my classmates. I didn't really have anyone close enough that I was close enough to that I would want to tell that. But it was good to get some books, although then again there was kind of that thing where it was 2006, so all the books were about boys. Like, I had this book called Freaks, Geeks and Asperger's Syndrome by Luke Jackson, which was published in 2002, and he was 13 when he wrote it, and he's from England. So it was like, well, this should be a really cool book, because it's like written by someone who's about the same age as you, but because he was like a 13-year-old boy in England and I was a 12-year-old girl in New Zealand, like, I couldn't really see myself in it. And so even after we got that diagnosis, like, I spent a lot of time like reading over diagnostic criteria and reading books and still being like, I don't see myself in here. And so it took most of my teenage years to like come to feel comfortable that it was a label that I could actually use, and particularly it was once there started coming out books that were written by women about their experiences of being autistic, that I was like, oh wait, that's me. Like I remember, so a book that came out in 2015 called Sisterhood of the Spectrum by Jennifer Cook O'Toole. So that was like when I was like, oh my gosh, like this is me in a book. And obviously that was like 9 years after I got the diagnosis. So my mum said that, like the teacher said that in one of my parent-teacher interviews. She was like, yeah, my only concern is that she's still very into imaginative play. And my mum was like, why is that a problem? Like she can always entertain herself. So I guess I still had a lot of interests that that just meant that I didn't have a lot in common with girls that were the same age as me. And I think also because my sister is 2 years younger than me, so I did rely on her quite a lot for like social support. I mean, so I went to 3 primary schools because I started primary school. We were living in Adelaide in Australia, so I started primary school there.
Sorry, you were born here? Or?
I was born in New Zealand, and then my dad's a doctor, and as part of his like specialist training, we went to Adelaide for him to finish that off. So I started school there, and I just ended up in a classroom that was like perfect classroom. Like the teacher gave us all an individual spot on the mat to sit in. Like we sat in like perfectly straight lines on the mat. Like it was just very like routine and regulated, and it worked quite well. And also the way the school system worked there, you started, like they had a cohort of people start at the start of a term. So I turned 5 towards the end of term 1, so I started at the beginning of term 2. So I started with like a whole group of friends that I'd known at kindy and stuff. So I think things were okay then. And then we moved to New Zealand, and my first primary school here, it had like mixed classes. So like I was originally in a year 3-4 class when I was in year 3, and then I was in a year 3-4 class when I was in year 4. And that was the best year because I was then able to make friends with a lot of the year 3s, whereas when I'd been in the year
the same age as you?
Yeah, so I was like, when I was in year 4, all my friends were in year 3. So they were a year younger than me, but they were in the same class, so it was fine. So it was just that kind of thing of finding it easier to relate to kids that were a bit younger. And then when I was in year 5, I moved into a year 4-5 class, but I didn't have any of my friends in it. And so then again, that was really hard. And then we moved to my school that I did year 6 and then all the way through till year 13. And at that school, the classes were just 1 year level, so just year 6. But my sister was there and she's 2 years younger than me. So she made friends and then I just tagged along.
Which is a good thing, right?
Yeah. But I mean, it was good for me. I'm not sure it was probably a bit hard for her sometimes. Like I had this thing since I was about 9 called my round, where every night I had to go around. I had to like check the computer is off, I had to check the heater is off, I had to check the back door is locked, I had to check all the light switches are off, because I just had anxiety that like the house was going to burn down or someone was going to break in and murder us or whatever. But then it became into this whole like ritual of like, then I have to flick the light switch on 3 times and look at the moon and touch the window, and I had like 35 or something stuffed animals that I would count into my bed with me each night in a specific order. Like there were groups. It was like there's a group of 5 and they go in this order, and then there's a group of 2 and then there's a group of 1 and then there's a group of 13. So it just I guess just as I grew up, it became like there was the relating to people younger than you thing, but then there was also like a lot of anxiety and a lot of routines and rituals to cope with that anxiety. I was at a meeting for some work for the Ministry of Education the other day, and we were trying to come up with a sentence that like talked about all these different elements, and people were throwing all these like saying like, well, it's important that we mention this and this and this, and I was able to like synthesize that into a sentence which really worked. So I think just that. And I've always been like at meetings like when you need a person to like be the scribe and like take notes of like the key points. I've always been very good at just like summarizing into the key points. Like I've had people say, wow, you're so good at that. So yeah. Because I think I kind of knew that you were supposed to play with your Barbies, but what I wanted to do was tidy the Barbie house. So it was like, well, we're playing with them by doing like Barbie house cleanup. But yeah, so I guess that's the equivalent of like, you know, people always say, well, like little autistic boys like line up their toys or whatever, and I was lining up my toys. It's just it looked like tidying the doll's house, but I wasn't that interested in like playing imaginary scenarios with the dolls. Or even if I was like playing like wizard school or whatever, for me the fun part of that was getting all the old books out and like all the books that looked like they might belong in a magic library and like pretending to write essays about magic or whatever. It was never the like interaction with other kids. If I feel like I'm going to have a meltdown, I can do things to delay it so that I get home, but it's gonna happen.
Right.
Like for me, you cannot stop a meltdown from happening. Like you can, you know, I know that like I can let, you know, if I jog around the netball court 10 times or whatever, I'll be okay for a while, but it's gonna happen when I get home. But it's just being able to like have enough control that you can wait to get home till that happens. Yeah.
So if you're having a meltdown, what do you usually do? I learned from, I forgot the training, Autism 101 somewhere.
Yeah.
For a child, if the child is having a meltdown, you can't do anything about it. You just have to wait for the child to stop. Is that the same when you're adult?
Yeah, I kind of just have to wait for it to stop. For me, it will, so like as I said, I can sometimes feel it coming and I can like, if I do something really physical, then that can release, because it's like pent up energy, so you can release a bit of the energy that way, but it probably will eventually happen. So Altogether Autism is part of Your Way Kia Roha. Right. So Your Way Kia Roha does lots of different things. They also have like, I guess, also have like mobility centres where you can purchase and hire mobility equipment and hearing therapy and stuff, and the NASC service. But then Altogether Autism is like under Your Way Kia Roha, under that umbrella, and kind of the learning and information side of Your Way Kia Roha. So Your Way Kia Roha does training about, you know, disability in general, but then also has this Altogether Autism specific, and actually Altogether Autism is also run in partnership with Parent to Parent as well. So the research team is Parent to Parent's research team. So it's kind of like so Your Way Kia Roha evolved from when Life Unlimited and Accessibility came together, merged. And so it used to be Altogether Autism started as a partnership between Life Unlimited and Parent to Parent to provide this autism information service.
Takiwātanga in his, her, their own time and space.
Being cool. The kids that are in his class that have autism, super cool.
Autism's about a different perspective on life.
And once you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person.
There is nothing wrong with having autism, you know. The hardest thing with autism and intellectual disability and that is sometimes accepting it.
They bring change. They are non-judgmental.
Being different ways to thinking.
I'm autistic. If you don't look autistic, it is a very ableist statement.
Autism is a label. Forget the label and just live as normal life as possible. Autism is about hope.
Takiwātanga. Love Not Cure, Exploring Autism, One Strength at a time. Every tangata fight Takiwātanga is different. If you fail with one strategy, don't stop. Keep moving forward. Always remember that for every failure you encounter is one step closer to your success. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, me muto te whakawa haere. Let's stop judging others. Me mahi tahi tato. Let's all work together. Kia maya, kia kaha, be brave and be strong.